It's a lazy Sunday, but it is time to revisit one of the long-term ideas that we have been mulling over on this channel since the end of August when this one did fire off. That does suggest that Bitcoin is likely to go sideways enough from this current region. I think surprising most of this market right now, although it's very difficult to gauge sentiment because there's literally no one watching. There's literally no one watching this market. So when someone always says, everyone's bullish, so I'm bearish, like as some massive egotistical statement, it's like, yes, there's two people in this market right now, and one of the other people's is the opposite of you, sir. Congratulations. All right, sweet. Other than that, I want to welcome you back into the Krown Crypto channel. It's a nice little Sunday morning over here, and I forget exactly what I said earlier, but you know what? We're just going to jump right into the charts, starting off with, yes, indeed, the hash ribbons indicator. So this is a fundamentally based indicator that essentially does measure miner profitability. There are two major portions of this indicator that you need to be aware for this explanation, and that is one, the capitulation phase, as you can see right here on my current cursor, and then two, the blue buy signal over here, which is the more important part to this explanation. So throughout the history of Bitcoin, we have seen this fire off. This particular indicator fire off with that blue buy signal 15 prior times, not including the one that we did see most recently in the end of August, or yeah, actually this was rather early August. Besides the point here, more importantly, anytime we have seen that happen, the low prior to that blue buy signal was the low before never revisiting ever again, and Bitcoin going up and to the right and actually never going below that blue buy signal. Now, out of those 15 times, two of those times did not operate in the fashion that I just explained. So no, it is not 100% hit rate. Obviously, random things do happen, but generally speaking, a pretty good long-term signal for Bitcoin. I'll give you an example to, I think, best illustrate the point first, and then we'll go on into some new information. But we did see this one over here in September 2nd, or sorry, this was August 29th of 2016. We can see that blue buy signal right here, obviously. And where was the low prior to that blue buy signal? It was right here. And as you can see, Bitcoin goes up and to the right, comes, it has these corrections along the way, but never even goes below it. And sorry, I need to add a very important part to this because otherwise I'm sure that someone will get very mad. But this is all operating on a closing basis, not a wick basis, meaning that seeing as we do have this blue buy signal over here, and this is the prior low, Bitcoin could have a wick below that low, but just not close below that low. We have seen that several times in the past, actually, and not violate that condition. So in this case, that's why I do have this as a line chart, because it just shows the closures. Obviously, we went to the old hollows right there. You could see that, well, actually, there still was not a wick below, but that was a pretty cut and dry example. Compare that with maybe this guy over here. Again, blue buy signal. There's your prior low, comes down, tests around it, no wicks below it. In this case, certainly no closures below it, and then upwards and onwards. And then same thing over here. This would be an example of one of the two failures that we did see throughout the full history of Bitcoin. That was in December of 2019. And of course, this was your blue buy signal. This was your, weekly low right here. Bitcoin does move to the upside first. I mean, it does go up about 50% or more than 50% to the upside. But then you do have March 2020, the old Rona times right there. Might call it a black swan, might call it a bit of an outlier, but hey, that does violate the principle that we set out earlier. And then of course, we do have, several examples over here, operates in the same fashion. And then for the other failure, which I also think is rather interesting, this one happened in August of 2021. Again, setting in the low right here, Bitcoin comes back down and retests it on September of 2021. Again, does get a wick around that region, but no closures below that region, and actually goes on to make new all-time highs. But then, yes, about a year later, does come down, violates that principle severely, and just like the old Rona times, after that dumps off another, 50% almost. For whatever reason, my eye is like really itching right now. I don't know why. Like, this is so bizarre, and it's such an awkward place to itch, but it's really annoying. Anyways, so for the current time, we do see that yet again, we have that blue buy signal on the weekly time frame right here, whereas the prior weekly low to that blue buy signal, it would be right in over here, which would be about 25,800. And so far, Bitcoin has failed to close below that region. on a closing basis. I think a little bit more easy to see again on a line chart. You can see right here, it does look like it's actually lower right here, but it is not. This one did close $40 above, or about, a good amount above right here. And the current one is pretty much right at it. So we don't really have too much to update on that as of this exact moment. Now, what I did want to go over is that, one, this is still holding true despite Bitcoin being, sideways AF for the past, what is this now? 1, 2, 3, basically 4 weeks. It has still failed to kind of violate this condition, holding on to this region right in alignment with that prior low. Yeah, it's a few bucks above, but a few bucks above is, good enough. And it is interesting to me that in the 2 times that we have seen this fail, it did have pretty nice upside moves first, actually. Actually, I want to measure this one out. In this case, coming in from 2021, yeah, that was about a 70% move. About 65% move right there. And then, of course, the one before the Rona dump was about 50%. So, I don't know how much that matters, but in this case, if we do start to see Bitcoin close below that prior weekly low, okay, then there's a problem. Then very likely we do see Bitcoin come down significantly, I would say, most likely in the next week, actually. But until then, the more that Bitcoin trades sideways here, just spinning its wheels without really falling through severely, the more and more likely it is going to be coming into the end of this month, as we'll discuss later, that Bitcoin's likely to at least see another try to the upside. I think also it's worth to know that the 5-day time frame has the same sort of interplay, and the 5-day time frame is a little bit more lenient into where this last low was for Bitcoin, because a 5-day time frame has a slightly different close than the weekly, and the 5-day time frame did close 25,200. So which one's the right time frame to use? Well, it's actually hard to say because both the 5-day and the weekly have all of the same past signals and setups, and they've all worked out in the same fashion. So I don't really have one that's like takes precedence over the other until one fails. But you would expect that the weekly time frame would be the more optimal, being that it is a higher term time frame, so it should be more accurate. But I do want to put that out there as a potential a potential kind of not workarounds, that's not the right word, but just like as a potential nuance to be aware of, because if it is operating off of the 5-day, then yeah, that pivot could be a little bit lower, 25,200 versus 25,800 on a closing basis. So just for what it's worth. Anyways, the reason why I do say that the end of September is more likely to see upside than downside is again related to this analysis over here. That's the quad witching. We have that coming up into the 15th. So generally speaking, I think most people are aware that September is, a bad month for markets, all markets, Bitcoin included. And that is very much true. But when you actually dial in on the data, it does seem that it's really about the first half of September that's truly bad, especially for traditional markets and Bitcoin by extension. And then after about the midpoint of September, which coincides typically with the quad witching date, which is a humongous expiration in traditional markets for equity options and futures and index options and futures. That creates a major turning point for markets typically, because that is where the big money managers are going to be making their decisions. I mean, they have a humongous expirations coming out in this next week, actually, so they have to either roll those positions, create new positions, change their positions. It could be a whole plethora of things, which is why we do see turning points around these dates a lot of the time. Obviously, quad witching, there are 4 of them per year, and this one is, well, the most relevant because it's the one that's coming up in literally just about 5 days from now, on the 15th of Friday, on Friday and in September. But after that time, we have seen for Bitcoin throughout the past 8 Septembers that it has actually closed a month positive from that date, from basically the quad witching to the end of the month, of September. So for Bitcoin, 8 of the past 8 have actually closed like basically neutral or positive, with an average return of just over 5.25%. For the winning side, we have seen this one print losses 2 times in Bitcoin's history. That was in 2014 and 2011 for a just under 1% and a just over 3.5% loss respectively. So not anything like super crazy there. And again, we actually do have a lot of reads that are more or less unchanged. I mean, 1% or less. So fair enough. So, if Bitcoin can survive sideways into this next Friday, I would say that the probability of this, of this hash ribbons indicator signal working out yet again is going to be greatly increased. 5% to the upside, if it does get that average return, would put Bitcoin, if it comes from here, at around $27,000, which is what I did say was, at least in my opinion, for September, the best case scenario for BULAs is somewhere around 27 or a little bit below 27. So yeah, still kind of in alignment with that. Obviously, if this condition over here is completely wrecked, then I'd have to go with the past failures and say that this one's going to come down significantly more, probably into the low 20s, like 20 to 21, 22-ish region at least. But we'll cross that bridge when we get to it, I guess. And what else? I also want to just address this point as well. Whenever I spoke about the hash ribbons indicator in the past, there seems to be like a lot of people who fucking hate me for talking about it, which is interesting. But then I kind of did my research and I think I know why. It's because all of the open mouth faced YouTubers seem to just, be flippantly talking about this, and it means moon mode, which that is not what it means, and that's not what I'm saying. Hopefully I'm putting a little bit more of a nuanced analysis on this and not just going with that. Anyways, we can go check out Bitcoin as well. Things are unchanged here still. 4-hour HPDR ranges are showing the exact same numbers basically to the downside, 25,250, which is of interest actually, because that is very much in alignment with the 5-day low. So maybe that one is better to be going off of. Top side of the range still coming in at 26.6. Accurately getting our rejection from this past week as well. Not bad there. Going over here to stochastic momentum, we can go pick up this, go into here, and see that the daily actually is currently pivoted at 25,800 basically. So that would be in alignment with the weekly, which is closing tonight, obviously. If we go to the 2-day time frame, closing not tonight but tomorrow night, same pivot basically, 25,780. 5-day time frame, also not closing tonight, but will be closing tomorrow night. No, the Tuesday night. This one is coming down severely now and actually going to be turning up if Bitcoin does close above 27. I think that's unlikely on this next closure, but it will be fulfilling a trendline regression test here, coming in all the way from June of 2022 lows. So that I do think is going to be significant, but again, not going to be relevant until we get the period after this next period. So 2 periods from now. And then the weekly obviously closing today as well. Pivot coming down here, quite a fair bit. I'm curious to see what that prints next, opening up into tomorrow. 28,700 basically is the current number. That was coming down about $1,000 from last week. So I do think that that's also significant. So it's a fun game here that we get to play, especially between, this Sunday and next Sunday. It's like, does Bitcoin hold on this level or not? If it survives this week, I'm going to be inclined to say that given the probabilities, we're more likely to see this one try upside next, at least until the end of this month. And then we get to October and see what the fuck's going on there. So I think that's a good place for me to be leaving off on this video. I don't want to make it too long. I want to make this one digestible because I suspect that, if you do find this one, in some way valuable, maybe you do consider sharing it as perhaps other people might be interested in a more nuanced interpretation of, of what's going on as of this moment. So I'll leave things right there. As always, I want to wish you the best. Take care, much love, and see you hopefully Monday.